3, go.
Hi everyone, this is Martin. I'm going to show you PFM on Central Incisor today. Hope you find it useful. So now we have prepared the putty, which according to the guideline it has to, we need to cut it once in the middle. So we did prepare the putty nice and fit. As you can see, your putty doesn't have to be too large and too much fingerprint on it. Try to make it as pretty as possible. The bear I'm going to start with is 170L, as you can see, with two striper blue bands, and I'm going to start with this because this is a nice bear. You can maneuver with it, you can create a shoulder with it, and it's very useful for this purpose. So as this is a PFM crown, which is porcelain fused to metal, we know the dimension is slightly different from posterior crowns. So as we all know, according to the guideline, we need to cut 2 mm of the incisor ledge. We need to cut 1.2 mm roughly from the buccal surface, which is going to be a shoulder margin, and 0.5 mm to 0.5 to 1 mm from the palatal surface, which is going to be chamfer. As I said, I'm going to start with a 170L bear to start with incisor ledge. If I cut the incisor ledge first, then the tooth height is shorter, so then later on I'm going to cut only in 2 planes rather than 3 planes. Here we go. The finger rests on the adjacent teeth, and then I'm going to start from it's very important not to damage the adjacent teeth. I'll be repeating this throughout the demonstration because this is one of the criteria that we all have to avoid if we want to succeed in the exam. So hold the bed straight. We don't want to bevel the tooth at all. I am not a great fan of groove depth because later on when you want to smoothen it, it's going to be very difficult, and you may or may not end up with overcutting. So as you can see, I didn't cut the 2 corners of it, and it becomes almost like a cat, but those 2 corners going to protect us from damaging the adjacent teeth. The reason I didn't cut them at this point is I'm going to cut them with my proximal cutting later on anyway, so no point of risking that. I'm going to check with the putty, make sure at this point I have cut roughly around 1.5 mm, which this is about 1.5 mm. So incisor ledge is almost finished at this point, and later on with the polishing at the end, we're going to cut another 0.5 mm to reach the optimum reduction of 2 millimeters. Now that incisor ledge is complete, we are moving to the next surface, which is going to be the buccal surface. For buccal surface, still it's a direct vision, so it's quite nice and easy. Your finger rests on the adjacent teeth on the like a 1-1, and you can start with the buccal reduction. So what I usually do, I create my margin first, which is going to be 1 mm above the gingival line according to the guideline, but you know this is the preparation only for the exam, and in your patient, in the real patient, it's different. You can't leave it 1 mm above the gum line for aesthetic reasons. So once like this I have my margin, then I can cut in 2 planes, which first plane will be parallel to the long axis of the tooth, and the second plane will be we tilted 5 to 10 degrees, and then we do the second plane. and obviously you need to blend those two planes together so there should be no ledge or step between them. So it's good to check every now and again, very frequently, before your cut goes wrong or you do overcut, because if you check it frequently, if even something goes wrong, you have the time to turn it back and turn it right. But if you do it too much without checking, you may overcut and nothing you can do. So this is only cut about 0.5 to 0.6 millimeters, so I know I still have a lot of room to cut. But it's still the same thing. In two cut, we need to maintain the buckle anatomy, and we don't make it too flat. As you can see, the movement of the bear is in an arch shape, and you're not making it too flat. You still maintain the anatomy nice and smooth. You go down, and you know that margin should be shoulder and 170, because it's flat end. It gives you that nice margin at the end. Okay, so I'm going to check it again one more time with the putty, and that is about 1 mm cut now. I'll leave the rest of it. That's exactly 1 mm. I'll reduce at this point. You can see with the William probe I'm checking 1 mm reduced, and it's a nice and even reduction. Try for even reduction, because if you don't have an even reduction at the end, you're going to get uneven thickness of the metal and ceramic, and that will aesthetically affect your cut. So that is 1 mm cut from the buccal surface. Now I'm going to move into the proximal surfaces. Let me turn it back. Now we're cutting into proximals. For interproximals, we hold the bear straight. We're not tilting because we end up with undercut, and if we taper it too much, then your crown will be unretentive and retention will reduce. So we're going to go straight and leave a thin shell of the tooth in between to protect us against damaging the adjacent teeth. And once you cut it, it's lots of room you can play with. And remember that in the interproximal, even the thickness, the distance between the margin and the gum should be 1 mm, no more. There you go, interproximal cuts, and we have not damaged the adjacent tooth, which is very, very important. Now we're going to cut the palatal margin. Palatal margin, as we know, is has to be a chamfer margin, which we cut with 767, very fine, which is this pair with double yellow band. Okay. So for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to cut the palatal in a bit larger mirror, larger than intraoral one. That one is intraoral as well, but it's for orthodontic purposes. So I'm going to cut with that so you can see the angulation of the bear and the tooth as well. As you can see now, we have the interproximal cut as well. The nice thing about cutting the interproximal with 170 is it gives us a nice 0.5 mm margin, which we can work on it very nicely later on. Okay, So buccal interproximal is cut. Now we're doing the palatal margin, which, as I explained, with 767 very fine, which is a chamfer bear. It's going to be a bit awkward cutting in this large mirror, but I'm going to try. We hold the bear parallel to the long axis of the tooth and slightly, only a few degrees, tilted toward the tooth itself. Not too much, but slightly only. Yeah. And then we maintain the we try to maintain the margin still 1 millimeters above the gum. There we go. So as you can have a nice and smooth palatal margin. Only in a few seconds. Yeah. The important thing about this is we're not using the the tip of the bear, so do not hold your bear like this, or do not hold your bear too much like this. It is with the tip and with the side of the bear which you cut. So basically you put your bear at this angulation and in this position. Now the tip of handpiece is licking. It's a bit annoying now. So not this angulation, because you will end up with disaster and with undercut as well. And you can see the margin is 1 mm above the gum, continues with interproximal. Now we're going to cut the palatal surface, which is I'm gonna to use 285 very fine, which is, you know, all as a rugby ball shape, this pair. Right? So this is a very nice and smooth bear to cut the palatal. The good thing is, once we cut the palatal, because it's a very fine bear, you don't need to literally polish the palatal, because that's going to give us a very smooth and nice surface. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place it on the palatal surface and move it only mesiodistally. Again, with this, be very careful, do not damage the adjacencies. Nice and smooth cut, and that was very quick and time efficient as well. Okay, but however, we need to check it with the Putty index to see the reduction and if it's enough or not. So you can see palatal, which I'll show you later on properly, is nicely cut, 0.5 mm, and well, literally palatal is finished. Let me turn the head so you can see the palatal reduction. You can see at no points is touching, but I'm going to cut the middle of the palatal surface a bit more, around the cingulum and around the incisal edge is nicely cut. So that's why I'm telling that always check it very frequently, rather than do it too much before you check it. So I'm going to place it in the palatal. Try to be very relaxed when you cut. Don't be tense, don't put too much pressure, don't use your muscles too much. It's going to be a very light and smooth cut and moves over the tooth, because it's a metal bear against the plastic teeth, and it's gonna cut very nice, silky and smooth. There we go. That's a nice palatal margin. Now I'm going to come back to the buccal to do my finishing, the finishing on the buccal reduction, and also on the buccal shoulder, and if I want to make it winged or wingless, which is up to me and up to yourself. Both of them are acceptable equally, but I like winged more because it's more preservative and conservative cut. So this time I'm going to, like the wing according to the guidelines should be just buckle to the contact point, because there is no longer contact point left, so it's approximate. You just feel where is the contact, and once you do the final buckle reduction, if you every time stop at one point and don't go beyond that point, a wing will appear itself. You always need to check the width of your shoulder in the mirror to see whether it is like an equal width or not, and as I explained before, you need to very frequently check your reduction as well. So reduction now is about 1.2, which is about enough, but now I have some finishing to do. Basically the finishing would be removing the final 0.5 mm of the incisal, which initially we reduced 1 mm, 1.5 mm. The sharp edges, you just basically need to remove them, and if you have any sharp edge into proximal or any sharp edge here, you can either remove it with hatchet or remove it with the blade very gently like this. You just basically touch the sharp edge. You don't need to make the margin wider or something to do with the margin here. Literally, just removing the sharp edges. Now as we can see, it's finished. We one more time we're going to review all the criteria that you need to have in your cut in order to pass the exam. Buckle margin nice and even from wing to wing. Shoulder margin about 1.2 mm. Buckle reduction as well. We have two wings, which according to guidelines it's 1 mm. It's just buckle to the contact points. All the margin all around is 1 mm above the gum line. Have a look at the palatal. Now, palatal margin as well, 1 mm above the gum. It's shoulder margin, it's chamfer margin, and it is 1 mm above the gum. And if you hold your mirror, intraoral mirror, like this, you need to be able to see all margin like a ring around it. If you don't see the margin at one point, that means either you have undercut or at some points your margin is not wide enough. This is the end. The PFM preparation, we're going to take a very close pictures as well and upload some photos of the preparations. This is now finished. We're going to soon make more videos of the other preps. Thank you.